The Basics of a Hero, Scenes 1 to 3. Scene 1. The Training Hall of Swords. The sound of clashing steel echoed through the stone-walled training hall as Kyle squared off against his instructor. Sweat dripped down his face, and his muscles screamed in protest, but he refused to yield. His instructor, a seasoned swordsman with years of experience, circled him like a predator, eyes sharp and calculating. Focus, Kyle, the instructor barked, launching a series of quick strikes that forced Kyle to retreat. You're too tense. Relax your grip, or you'll never have control. Kyle adjusted his stance, his grip loosening slightly on the hilt of his sword. He tried to focus on the fundamentals: footwork, timing, precision. But no matter how hard he concentrated, his moves felt sluggish, and his responses were always a fraction too slow. The instructor's blade tapped Kyle's shoulder, signaling the end of the bout. Kyle's shoulders slumped in defeat. You have potential, Kyle, the instructor said, sheathing his sword. But potential means nothing without discipline. You can't rush the basics. They are the foundation of everything. Master them, and the rest will follow. Kyle nodded, frustration gnawing at him. He had wanted so badly to impress his instructor, to show that he was more than just a boy with dreams. But the basics were all he had, and they felt like a prison, keeping him from reaching the heights he aspired to. Scene 2. Magic and Missteps. In a dimly lit room filled with ancient tomes and the scent of burning incense, Kyle stood before a lectern, a spellbook open in front of him. The words on the page seemed to blur as he tried to focus on the incantation, his mind a jumble of anxiety and doubt. The magic instructor, an elderly woman with a kind but stern demeanor, watched him with patient eyes. Magic is about intent and clarity of thought, Kyle, she said, her voice soft but firm. You must clear your mind of doubt or the spell will falter. Kyle took a deep breath and began to recite the incantation. He felt the magic stir within him, a faint warmth spreading through his body. But just as he reached the final words, a wave of doubt crashed over him. Was he doing it right? Would it work? The spell fizzled out, leaving only a wisp of smoke in the air. Kyle's shoulders sagged, and he looked down at the spellbook in defeat. You're too focused on perfection, the instructor said gently, approaching him. Magic isn't about mastering every spell in existence. It's about understanding the principles and using them to achieve your goal. If you can master the basics, you can accomplish great things. Kyle nodded, but the doubt lingered. How could he become a hero if he couldn't even cast a simple spell without faltering? Scene 3. Endless repetition. The sun beat down mercilessly as Kyle stood alone in a secluded clearing, his sword gripped tightly in his hand. He had been there since dawn, practicing the same sequence of strikes, blocks, and parries over and over again. His muscles ached, his vision blurred with exhaustion, but he pushed on. One more time, he muttered to himself, raising his sword. He moved through the sequence, each strike more precise, each block more solid than the last. The movements were second nature now, ingrained in his very being after years of relentless practice. But even as he trained, a voice in the back of his mind whispered doubts. Was this enough? Could he really become a hero with just these basic skills? The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the clearing. Kyle finally lowered his sword, panting heavily. His body was exhausted, but his mind was still restless, the doubts gnawing at him. He sheathed his sword and sat down on the grass, staring up at the sky. The stars were beginning to appear, twinkling faintly against the darkening canvas. For a moment, he let himself dream of the hero he wanted to be, the one his mother had seen in him. But the dream felt distant, just out of reach. With a heavy sigh, Kyle lay back on the grass, his sword resting beside him. He would continue training tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day, until he could finally silence the doubts and become the hero he was meant to be.